Hi, I would like to share some with you about a very important topic, the marriage that we wanted to include in some of our videos. And it's about what we call blood covenant marriage. It's something that is very different than a lot of people think about, but it's a very powerful and an important way to ensure that you have a marriage that is going to last a lifetime, and you're going to enjoy that marriage, and you're going to stay together and work through all the issues and problems in a very healthy environment, because you've made this covenant with each other. And a covenant is intended to be a lifetime agreement between two partners, two people. It can be two men in a business agreement and enter into a covenant, or it can be a man and a woman who enter into a covenant with their marriage, and that this covenant will last a lifetime, and nothing that either party involved in the covenant can do will cause the other one to break that covenant with them. It's just something that is very powerful when it's honored and kept, and it can really create this environment around us that is secure, and you feel safe, and you feel like you can have an open, intimate conversation and relationship with the other person. And we all have very sensitive spirits, and we can be hurt, and we can have problems with a relationship if we don't have this feeling of safety and security included with it. A covenant is equally binding to both people in the partnership. It's unconditional, and it lasts a lifetime. That's a covenant. Now, covenant marriage creates this environment through some actions that are taken to our outward expressions and signs of the covenant, as well as what's taking place in your heart as you change how you're going to live your life, how you're going to connect and respond and live with this other person that you're entering into marriage with. It's a place where we can open our hearts and what we call take the roof off and the walls down, so that that other person, you're inviting them and allowing them to come into every part of your heart, come into every area of your life, and be open and without fear, or without feeling threatened, or without concern about what might happen, because you have this agreement, you have this covenant, you've made this pledge with each other that you're going to stay together and you're going to work this out. Now, some of the elements that make up a good covenant marriage, it's first, though, a fruit of a loving relationship. Even before you are willing to make this deep of a commitment, you need to be in a loving relationship with that other person. That's why dating is an important part of this, is spending that time to establish that strong love bond that's going to help you carry out the whole elements of the covenant and keep your part of the agreement and covenant you're making with an other person. And each person has to be responsible for their own actions, and that's really an important one. That you realize that sometimes what you do is going to impact another person, and you need to take responsibility for it, whether it's a good action and a good experience, or if something you made a mistake or did something wrong, and you need to take responsibility for it as well. And it's based upon choices and not just feelings. We're using our ability to stand on this covenant agreement and not just be moved by feelings. If I don't feel loved one day, that doesn't mean I'm broken the covenant. If I'm angry, or if I'm upset, or if I'm dealing with issues of emotions, it's not going to impact the agreement, the covenant that you make with each other. And It's selfless love, both given and received. The covenants are beautiful and they work well when both partners are willing to give and receive that love. And nothing the other person will ever do will stop you from breaking your part of the covenant. Now, I want to just caution here, in reality, there are some situations where it may be unsafe, or it may be damaging to our health issues involved if the one person in this covenant marriage is not willing to honor their part of the covenant, and they become abusive or cause issues that could threaten your life or threaten the health and well-being of your children in this marriage. I'm not talking about you endure regardless of what the person does. There is some reality that you may need to go get help for this. You may need to separate for a time, or you may need to actually go farther and break this covenant because of it's not healthy or safe any longer to stay in connected with that. And that requires you going and getting some counseling, getting some help. Most marriages are salvageable if both parties are willing to work on it, stay connected through the covenant agreement they made, and work out the issues, stop the bad behaviors, break the bad habits and patterns that have brought you into an unhealthy part of your relationship with each other. So a couple of things to look at between difference between a covenant and a contract. A lot of people in our country, in the United States, enter into a contract. If everything goes as performed and lined out and laid out in the contract, then I'll stay married to you. But if you break your promise to keep the part of the agreement, then I have the right to break the contract and leave the agreement and break that what would be not a covenant, it would be a contract. So in a covenant, it's equally, both sides are responsible to carry out the covenant. It's not ever revocable. It's not ever cancelable, except for those extreme issues that I mentioned. And it's a total obligation and commitment. In the contract, you're only obligated and committed to that other person as long as they perform what they said they would perform or do in the contract that you make. I'll keep my word if you keep your word. There's the contract issue. In the covenant, I'll keep my part of the covenant whether you keep your part or not. That's a powerful place to come from in a covenant relationship in a marriage. You can work through issues and problems when you're in that level of commitment. I guess give an example to keep on track with time. Is when a marriage is based on a contract, I'll live with you, I'll love you until there's adultery, abuse, incompatibility, or someone else comes along. Then there's no protective covering. Like I said earlier, this covenant marriage gives you that protection of the commitment level that you're going to work this out with the other person. You're not just going to close your suitcase, pack up, and leave for any reason other than the couple that I mentioned. And contract marriages leave a very level of insecurity, both at the husband and level, but also with the children. The children can have no stability in their lives. If they're uncertain of whether or not their parents are going to stay married, they might have difficulties making commitments and being stable in their own lives. And they can't ever commit to anything, and it kind of eliminates this long-term thinking. In covenant marriage, you're thinking long term. You're going to do this till death you part. So let's look at a blood covenant from a biblical perspective, which is what, when the Bible was written, this was what everyone thought when they talked about covenants and blood covenants. So you make that commitment before God, and it's a commitment for long term till death that you depart. In the actions that take place to form this blood covenant, you write down terms that express what's going to be included in the covenant, what's the scope of the commitment that's made with each other, and you're making available everything and all the resources you have for that other person that you're entering into a blood covenant with. There's witnesses that make sure that the covenant is carried out and honored. There's an exchange of some outward expression of this commitment, like both parties often made a scar in their skin, and they put something in it so that it would form a scar as an outward expression of that covenant they were making with the other person. Some of them mingled blood in a drink of wine or something from each of them, cutting their own body a little bit to allow a little blood to drop into it, and they drank that together as a symbol that my blood and your blood are now one, and we're entering into this blood covenant. And they made vows of fidelity, of faithfulness before God of what they were going to do, and they exchanged gifts. A lot of times there was a coat represented that one person that was given to the other person in a symbolic way, telling them everything that's mine, everything in my possession, all of my resources and everything represented by this coat is now yours, and the other one would give the coat to them. And sometimes, like in African countries, we found out that each of the tribes have patterns of colors in the material, garments they wear, and the husband would give the pattern of the garment, the materials for his tribe, to the other one, saying that we're joining together both tribal at a tribal level. And there were weapons that were often exchanged to show that my force, my strength, my ability to fight for you is there for you to use, and you give them an example of a weapon belt or something that would represent you're agreeing to the same thing from your perspective. And oftentimes there were names were joined together. They would add the other person's name to their name and make a new name that represented the two of them together as one unit, one people together, all their possessions, all their family and everything would be joined together as one. And there was a symbol of the blood, the shed blood, that would be a representation of I'm making a sacrifice, I'm making a commitment here that is I'm honoring with my very own blood in the giving of that. I'm willing to give my whole life for you in this covenant. And then there was the sharing of a covenant meal. After all the other parts of it were done, they would join together in a festive celebration of a meal together. Well, our wedding ceremony, the traditional weddings that we've always done in our country, and I think I see that in a couple of weddings that we've had a chance to observe in Africa, all of these covenant steps to making a blood covenant marriage are in the marriage ceremonies. For example, we always have a pastor or a priest or someone representing God there. We make these stand before God as a husband and wife making this agreement, this covenant of marriage. We express the terms. I take you to be my wife, to love and to cherish and to have and to hold until death, to goodness and bad times, to famine and feasting, however the wording is, but it's an expression of the terms of this wedding, of this marriage ceremony you're going through. And all gifts are exchanged. A lot of times there's rings exchanged, which is not only can be a gift, but an outward sign, this exchanging of a symbol that this is part of me now, this, as you're wearing it, showing that we're in covenant together. And that's why the whole ring ceremony is so powerful and important. And vows are pronounced that, and the vow is I'm going to, you've worked out the terms and conditions, and now you actually physically speak them out and enter into this vow, saying that you're going to follow through with them. And there's witnesses. You have the person marrying you that is signs the marriage license, and there's the bride. Oftentimes the bridegroom signs the marriage license as someone who's going to stay and watch and make sure you fulfill the terms of this wedding marriage covenant that you're making with it. And afterwards there's this meal that's being celebrated. So even in the father coming with his daughter to give his daughter to the man in marriage, he's releasing her from his responsibility and control and giving it fully to the man, is very similar to what first God did by bringing Eve to Adam and establishing that first covenant marriage. And then when God brings the bride of Christ, Jesus, as the groom, and the church and Jesus joining together into this sort of a bigger marriage covenant relationship. And even the idea of the shedding of blood is very powerful. A woman, his body is made with a thin fleshly material, piece of flesh that is very thin, that covers and blocks the entry where a man enters into a woman when they make love or have sex. And that's how babies are created. And the first time a man enters a woman's body that way, he breaks that. And in the United States we call it a hymen. I'm not sure what might be in your language, but that's broken, and there's a little bit of blood released from that. God even designed a woman's body so that they would be making this blood covenant the first time they had made love together. And that was called confirming the marriage covenant by the shedding of that blood was the last step on them now being in covenant totally with each other. And that's why it's so powerful for a woman. She carries a very special part in her body with this hymen that is a way of expressing her commitment to her husband for the rest of her life. And the man needs to honor that. He needs to respect that. And when he's married and they have the covenant relationship completed, and he made the vows and he's made all the other steps of it, then the last sealing of this covenant is the shedding of blood the first time you make love together. So it's really a powerful thing that both a man needs to honor with the woman, and the woman needs to respect and protect that she's only going to give herself and allow that one person to enter her that will break that hymen and release the blood that establishes the blood covenant. There's also one other little thing that is interesting in traditions, is that there's a idea of what they call a threshold covenant. That a lot of the Middle Eastern countries honor and respect this. When you see it described in the Old Testament, when the king came, there was often blood put on the doorpost, inviting and welcoming the honorary person, the king or ruler of the nation, was coming to their house. And when they saw the blood on the doorpost, then he felt safe enough and he would step across the threshold. And when he put his foot inside the house, the understanding was that the owner of the house now was in a threshold covenant with the person entering his house, and he would honor and respect and protect that person as long as they were in the house or in his presence. And that is, we have a tradition in our country, the bridegroom, when he takes his bride off and they have their first night together, he picks her up and carries her and steps into the room where they're going to spend their first night together. And it's been a tradition that has carried on for a long time in our country, in our society. And even in the Jewish custom of the bridegroom going away and preparing the house where they would spend their life together with his future wife, when that was all ready, then he would go and take the wife and carry her back to the home where he was, and carry her and step into the threshold of their own house together, and entering into this covenant of agreeing to protect and secure and take care of that other person as long as they were in the house with them. So this whole idea of a blood covenant marriage is one to establish this level of security, of safety, of feeling like you can be totally open and honest with each other. You can be totally able to work out any differences and problems because you're committed to the relationship. You're going to do whatever it takes, whatever you need to do to rebuild or restore the trust if it's been broken, or to rebuild and restore the feelings of security and safety if that's been broken. You can do whatever you need to do because you're in this covenant relationship with your spouse, and that's the most important thing to you. But the fruits of that are a lifelong relationship that you can have with your spouse. And it's an opportunity for you to enjoy the depths of love that only come through that intimacy, through that transparency, through that openness, when you feel safe to open your heart and let someone else into your heart. That's why this blood covenant is such an important part of every marriage and every person's life. Now you might be asking about, well, maybe you made a mistake, or you have had a sexual relationship and the hymen has been broken, or maybe the husband dies and the woman remarries, or vice versa, and a man marries a widow. Those kind of situations where the hymen is no longer a part of that relationship that you're going to have because it's already been broken and the blood's already been shed. There you just have to enter into it from the believing that God is honoring this, even as though that was reestablished, because He has a forgiving heart, and He looks to the heart of us and not just to the physical body, and He's going to honor that when the man and the woman wait until they're married. They have all the covenant put together, that they have spend that first night together. It's just the same as if the woman was a virgin and this was the first time she ever had a man enter her that way. So don't get hung up on the restrictiveness that might feel from a blood covenant marriage. You can still have a blood covenant marriage, whether you got a divorce, whether you had an unfaithful husband, or whether your husband or wife died, or other reasons that they're no longer able, or that covenant, that covenant is fulfilled when one or the other person dies anyways. That's the fulfilling of the covenant. Just like when Jesus came and he fulfilled the first covenant by his death and resurrection, so that he could make the way for a new covenant to be established between the body of Christ, the church, and God through a totally new covenant. So it's till death you do part. So if it's death that caused that, then the woman is free to marry. That's what Paul says, free to marry again, because the first covenant has been completed. So there's a lot more. There's a lot of good resources out there, and I just encourage you to take advantage of what you can find out about blood covenant marriages. It's a powerful part to make your love and your marriage last a lifetime and be an enjoyable and not just an endurance test, but an enjoyable relationship for your whole lives together.